First of all, I would just like to say that I have met plenty of truck drivers in my life, and most of them have been pleasant, albeit a bit lonely. However, like any group of people, there are gross exceptions. A few months ago, I was driving back to school from visiting my parents. It's about a 2-hour drive, so I usually keep myself entertained with music. I'm a 5'3", 21-year-old female, driving my dad's little old pickup truck in the leftmost lane of a 3-lane highway, talking around to the music on the radio. Suddenly, I notice a semi-truck is going the exact same speed as me, in the rightmost lane. Embarrassed for getting caught in dork mode, I stopped singing and dancing and tried to speed up, so he couldn't see me anymore. He matched my speed, which ticked me off a little bit, so I looked at the driver, expecting to see some angry arsehole. To my surprise, he was smiling and waving. Thrown off, I kind of chuckled and waved back. Big mistake. He moves over to the middle lane to be closer to me, and now he won't stop smiling and waving. At first, I played nice, waving back a little because semi-trucks beat tiny pickup trucks any day. But I was mostly focusing on getting out of this guy's field of vision safely. I tried speeding up as fast as my truck would allow, which is about 90 miles an hour, and slowly slowing down as suddenly as I could without endangering someone behind me. But he would match my speed no matter what. And if there was someone coming up in his lane, he'd move to the right lane at the last possible second and pass them before I could slow down and get behind them. He's had a lot more practice with reckless maneuvering than I had, so he has trapped me, and he's using other cars to help him. The whole time, he's smiling, waving, and holding up the number 1 sign finger for some reason that I still don't know, and rapidly losing any charm he once had. As this continues for about 5 miles, I got worried and called 911. I gave them a description of the truck, white cargo truck, black cab, with some Pennsylvania company logo on it, and a driver, a balding middle-aged guy with a tan and a dirty blue t-shirt on. They advised me to pull over at the emergency shoulder on the left, but I've never done that before, and it looked too narrow, so I didn't feel comfortable doing it. At this point, he was almost passing someone else in the middle lane, and I finally had a chance to slow down and merge 2 lanes over to the rightmost lane. I started speeding past him so he couldn't trap me again, and the operator told me to take the closest service plaza about 5 miles away. She said he probably couldn't follow me, so I could stop there for a few minutes before getting back on the highway. She told me to call if he did follow again. He probably wouldn't though, so she hung up. Now, he's still holding up the number 1 sign and smiling this creepy, increasingly perverted grin at me, while I avoid eye contact. The service plaza is now a 1/4 of a mile away, and I'm not using any turn signals, but I guess he knew what I was doing, because he braked hard and merged behind me, right at the last second, to join me in exiting the service plaza. After I get my heart back up from the coronary it just experienced, I dialed 911 again. Now, the way the service plaza was set up was that semi-trucks had to use separate lanes winding to the right of the plaza that led to parking lots for big trucks. The rest of us used a smaller lane to park immediately in front of the plaza. I parked, and as I'm explaining to the new operator what's going on, I watch the semi creep around its path while the driver stares me down, smiling. I freaked. He knew where I had parked. He knew where to find me, if I just stayed there. I thought maybe I could have floored it to get back on the highway, but I was afraid he'd see me and follow me. I drove to the gas station on the left of the plaza, which had a view of the semi-truck parking lot, hoping he wouldn't find me until police came. Transfers me to the woman who was helping me before. She informs me that they've dispatched a couple of police cars, but wouldn't tell me how long they would be. I see the trucker had gotten out of his truck and is heading my way. Even though my windows are closed and my doors are locked, I'm panicking on the phone to the operator. She tells me the police should be there soon, and that I should be safe there. So I sit tight while I keep her updated. I wanted to, at least, drive back to the parking lot I was in before, but it was the only entrance to the gas station, so I couldn't. I glared at the trucker and showed him my phone when he came close. He finally stopped smiling and made it look like he was going to the service plaza. I looked in my right side view mirror and found him hiding behind the big white pillar in front, staring at me. Again I freaked out and asked the operator where the cops would be, and if I could leave because he was being ultra creepy. She tells me to sit tight again, because they're going to be there any minute. Then he comes out of hiding and starts walking towards my truck. I put it in drive just in case and tell the operator what he's doing. I refuse to make eye contact with him, but I keep watching my mirrors to make sure I know where he is. The smile is back, and he starts walking circles around my truck, looking at it as if he's looking for a way to get in. I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until he circled back behind me, floored it, and told the operator I was not waiting one more second for the police. She apologized and told me the police would look for the man and talk to him if they found him, and that I should focus on getting home safely while keeping an eye for him. I don't know if they did or didn't find him, but I know none of that would have happened if my boyfriend were with me. So not only could I not walk alone, but I now can't drive alone. Nice to know. But creepy trucker dude who can't take a hint? Let's not meet. This story happened to me 2 summers ago. Just a little about me before I get into it. I was 18 at the time and had just started college, living out of state, on my own for the first time. I had a pretty sheltered life as a female. So, my first semester at my out-of-state college had just ended, as it was May, and I was on my way home for my brother's wedding. I am about an hour away from my current residence, with a little over 3 hours left of my trip. Everything is going great, and I'm just cruising with traffic. It was a notably busy day for that particular stretch of interstate. As I said, all is well until I check my mirror. There is a truck a little further back up from my side of the car, in the lane next to me. I can see his headlights in my passenger side mirror. I look up, because even though it's the middle of the afternoon and super sunny out, this dude is flashing his lights at me. I try to brush it off, and assume he was just trying to get into my lane. So I try moving, and he stays behind me the whole time, not letting any other cars between us. He keeps flashing his lights at me, and I look up at him. He waves and honks. This was a red flag, but I took it the wrong way. I'm like, oh shit. I wonder if he's signaling me to pull over. I hope nothing is wrong with my car. The only reason I think this is because the other week before I was leaving, I had gotten a hole in my tire and had it patched. I was worried about the patch and thought it had fallen out, and that my tire was going flat as I travelled at 60 miles an hour. I'm freaking out about my car and plan to pull off at the next exit. Fortunately, it comes up quickly, and there's a gas station with some customers visible from the exit ramp. I head there and pull up at a gas pump. Curiously, the trucker follows me off the interstate and into the same parking lot, but he parked in the designated truck zone. I get out just before he parks and walk around my car doing a quick inspection. I see him start to get out of his truck, and I decide to buy gas, even though I filled up before I left. As I swiped my card to pay for my gas, the truck driver had reached my car. Luckily for me, since I was already pretty freaked out by him following me off the exit, I had my phone in hand with 911 already dialed, so I would just have to hit the call button. I left my driver door open and stayed between that and the gas house, him standing a few feet away from the back of my car, the hose separating us. The first thing the guy says to me is, "Well, aren't you a purty little thing?" I'm screaming in my head now, imagining all possible scenarios for an escape. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s, roughly 170 pounds, whereas me, an 18-year-old 125-pound girl, without muscle or fat anywhere on me. I wouldn't have been able to fight back much. Anyway, I tell him thank you, and he offers to buy me gas, and I declined, saying my parents gave me money. I was actually worried he would expect something in return if I had taken his offer. He asked me questions, like where I was from and where I was going, and didn't reveal a thing. My gas was done pumping after a minute, a whole $12, and with that, I bid him goodbye, jumped in my car, and got the hell out of there. I kept an eye on him as I left, making sure he didn't follow me any longer, and I never saw him again. I didn't know what he wanted with me that day, whether or not he just wanted to let me know I was attractive or not, or if he had much darker intentions planned. Maybe I should have reported him to the police. I've always been leery of sketchy truck drivers. This is a true story. It happened to me. I have been in this kind of situation before. I've had to deal with some really creepy, weird guys out there. Sure, but that just comes with the profession. When most guys see a lady trucker of my age and build, they can become very crude. I've been in several brawls as an adult, and lots of fights growing up. I've never been one for looking for trouble. Trouble has always had its way of finding me. Nothing I've ever dealt with, though, would have prepared me for this. I'm telling this story because these things I witnessed scared the hell out of me. I'm not the type that scares easy either. What I saw made me believe I was losing my sanity. I have a very strong belief in the paranormal. There are things in this world that we never fully understand. I am an over-the-road, self-employed trucker here in the States, I run almost all of the lower 48 states, and I've been trucking since I was 18. I've always wanted to be a trucker, since I was knee-height to a grasshopper. My dad has been driving since 1975, 43 years. He's 63, and is still trucking. He's always been my role model. Me and my dad are very close. My rig is a 2016 Freightliner Cascadia. It's a good truck, but I prefer long-hooded Peterbilt trucks. The model 379 is my favorite. I delivered a load in Portland, Oregon late in the evening. I was irritated because I was scheduled to deliver my load at 3:30 on a Friday. My dispatcher goes home at 5, but my unease was put aside when I rolled through the gate at 3 o'clock and got a message with details on my next load. This irritated me because outgoing freight in this area is slow right now. I didn't want to get stuck here all weekend waiting. The brokers for the company I'm leased to go home at 5, so I would be screwed on a Friday. I got delivered at 3:30. I pulled through the gate, leaving this receiver at 3:45. They unloaded me very fast, and no lumper fee. Yay. So I got back on good old Interstate 5 heading south towards Eugene, Oregon to pick up my next load. My next load was preloaded. All I have to do upon arrival is to drop the empty trailer and hook my loaded one and get the BOL and roll towards the receiver, which was in Eureka, California. After I got loaded in Eugene, Oregon, I got on Highway 126, headed west to Highway 101, the coastal highway, which is the fastest way to get to Eureka, California from here. I only had an hour and 23 minutes left on my logbook after leaving Eugene, so I had to roll as far as I could. I made it to a little spot on the side of the road 101, just in time too. I had exactly 14 minutes of driving remaining, and that was cutting it close. The sun had just gone down after I shut down for my 10 hours off. I go out to check my reefer temperature because this is a load of frozen food and must be maintained at -8 Fahrenheit. I get out with my flashlight and my metal tire thumper to check my tires and look for any leaks or oil, etc. My reefer temp was still okay, so I continued down the left side of my rig, beating my tires, checking inflammation conditions were all good. I go to the back of my rig, fixing to walk around the rear of the trailer, and I heard something walking around the woods. Something big and heavy. Whatever it was only 30 to 40 yards away from me. Its footsteps didn't sound like anything I'd heard before. It was in the woods to the right of me out of the trees. I turned to look with my flashlight but saw nothing. So I brushed it off as just some animal walking around or something. I started walking down the right side of my rig checking things, and this was very strong feelings of both dread and coldness that crept over me. I had the feeling I was being watched, so I slowly turned my head and my heart skipped a beat. My blood ran cold when no less than 100 feet away from me, in the tree line, were bright red eyes staring back at me. I felt as if they were staring into my soul. Whatever this thing was, it was at least a foot taller than I. I'm no small woman, 5'11" and 160 pounds, all-toned muscle. This thing stood there staring at me. I was petrified. I couldn't move. I was trembling with fear. I was shaking so badly that my flashlight pointed at the ground as I looked, waving back and forth. I finally worked the nerve to slowly raise my flashlight up to see what this thing was staring at me. What I saw I will never forget. It was a dog or wolf-like creature with slender long limbs and a jet black nose with long pointy ears, standing on its hind legs. It suddenly let out this god-awful shriek after raising its head. I can only describe this sound as a teenage girl screaming at the top of her lungs. It suddenly squatted down on its butt and looked at me like a cat does before it pounces on a mouse. At that moment, I realized, shit, the thing is going to attack me. It lunged at me. It was right in front of me in an instant. I realized I still had my tire thumper in my hand, so I whacked the thing across the side of its head. It let out a loud grunt, and I ran around for the front of my rig. I opened the driver doors and jumped in and locked it. I fully expected this thing to counterattack, but it didn't, at least not right away. I ran into my sleeper and grabbed my kukri knife. It's very long and razor sharp, and after grabbing my knife, I closed the curtains and sat in the dark. My heart felt like I was going to explode. It was shaking like a leaf from all the adrenaline. That's when I heard the creature crawl under my rig. I could hear it scratching and grunting. I felt it banging, like it was tearing my undercarriage to pieces. I grabbed my phone to call for help. Of course, no signal. I searched out the cab and turned on my CB radio and grabbed the mic and frantically started calling for help. I was down in a hole, but it was worth a shot. I got no response. I dropped my CB mic and reached over and pulled the air horn cable out and just held it wide open. My air horn is under my cab, and that's all it took. I heard it crawl out and run off, and all was quiet. After what seemed like hours, I finally calmed down and woke up to the sun barely coming up. I thought and hoped I'd dreamt it, but when I looked down, my hunting knife was still in my hand. I realized then it wasn't a dream. I waited for the sun to be in the sky before I came out and looked at my rig. I slowly opened the door, still clutching the knife. I had a look under, and to my surprise there was no damage of any kind. That's when I noticed a patch of black fur stuck to a bolt. To this day, I will never come down Route 101. I grew up in Utah, less than 10 miles away from the notorious Skinwalker Ranch. I had a similar experience there. I've always wondered if they're somehow related.